Welcome to this month's OLOC program, Losing Vision, Gaining Insight, with three panelists discussing their experience with losing vision. Many of us began to lose vision in our 60s from a variety of causes, such as cataracts, macular degeneration, retinal detachment, and diabetic retinopathy. Some of these are age-related, some not, but the chances of having vision problems greatly increases after age 65. 1 in 3 people age 65 and older has some form of eye disease that reduces vision. Age-related macular degeneration, AMD, affects nearly 12 million Americans, the majority of them over 60. It is the leading cause of legal blindness in this age group. 46% of people legally blind have AMD. Legally blind means vision worse than 2200 in the better seeing eye, even with correction. Almost half of people with any form of vision difficulty are 65 and older, and over half of the 8 million are women. Our panelists will describe their experience with treatments, resources, and adaptation to significant and/or progressive loss of vision. We have allowed ample time to ask questions or share your own experiences after the presentation. And there will be some handouts that Mev will put on the website after the program. Our three panelists are first J.R. Raphael, who has AMD, age-related macular degeneration in both eyes, one dry type, the other wet type. She has recently started a 2-year clinical trial referred by her doctor. She will discuss her experience with AMD and how it's being treated. Becky Dale will go second. She has a genetic progressive eye disease called retinitis pigmentosa that was diagnosed over 30 years ago. She will discuss the ways she has adapted to progressive loss of vision. Finally, Carla J. is a disability activist and is currently on the boards of the Pilot Dog Alumni Association and of Guide Dog Users of New York. She will discuss reading aids, useful websites, accessibility aids for computers and smartphones, and other resources. So I'll start with JR.
Well, thanks, Rose, and welcome everybody. So, in 2018, I found out from my optometrist, my eye doctor, that I had dry macular degeneration in my right eye, and I thought, oh, well, that's not very good, is it? She said, no, but it's very slight. And then for the past, well, that was 2018, and from 2018 to 2019, it got a little bit worse. Not a lot, just a little worse. And so I was kind of nervous about that. And people would ask me when I said I had AMD, age-related macular degeneration, they wanted to know whether it was the wet type or the dry type, and I didn't know there were two types. All I knew is I had it in my right eye. I had no idea which it was. So, and it ended up being the dry type. So in August of 2020, I started some eye drops that helped me to maintain the dry macular degeneration for the next 4 years, which was nice. And I thought, well, maybe it'll go away. That would be terrific. But I wasn't that lucky.
Let's just
JR, you're muted. Sorry about that.
Okay, I'll go back to in 2024. I noticed that the right eye's vision was not as good. In fact, it felt like I was getting another cataract on that eye because I'd had both eyes, the cataracts from both eyes, removed. And anyway, so my vision was pretty good until I started with the dry macular degeneration, and then all of a sudden, 4 years later, from 2020 to 2024, in 2024, I guess in August, no, after August. So sometime in 2024, I noticed that my vision had gotten worse because I keep a lot of bookmarks, let's say, a lot of different icons on my toolbar. And I keep the toolbar on the right side of my computer, and there's windows behind me. So I was having difficulty seeing the little dots, so I would know which of my programs were active when I was trying to shut down the computer, which meant I would have to close my right eye and look with the left eye. So I realized there was something wrong. And so had I had an appointment with my optometrist. She looked at it and she said, I need to send you to an eye surgeon because this is a little bit beyond, what I do. So I got an appointment a month later with the ophthalmologist, who was an eye surgeon. And the result of that, he said, was that in my right eye that was dry, all of a sudden it was wet. The macular degeneration was wet, which means there's water in there. There was some kind of liquid inside of the eye that if it gets worse, what happens with AMD is that your field of vision ends up, you lose your field of vision in the middle of your eye. So if you think of it that your pupil all of a sudden is not seeing anything, and you can only see with the colored circle, whatever color your eyes are. And that's pretty scary. You really, and then it just gets worse from there, as I understand it. So, and then he told me, oh, and by the way, you have dry macular degeneration in the left eye. Oh, I thought, okay, great. Wasn't happy about that. So he got me an appointment with a retinologist in Springfield, Massachusetts. And so I saw the retinologist for almost 2 years, and the treatment for wet macular degeneration is a injection in the side of your eye, excuse me, of a medication, and the purpose of that medication is to dry that eye out, get rid of the liquid, whatever's in there. And the first injections, I mean, they numb your eye and all of that. You don't have to worry about what it feels like. But after several months of the first injection, which was a generic, lo and behold, the FDA shut that company down because as my eyes were getting better with that drug, all of a sudden they started not getting better. And I was going to be changed to getting the shots closer and possibly going to the more expensive original name, brand name drug, not a generic. Then I find out from my retinologist that that company with the generic was shut down because the lab was not clean. For whatever reason, it wasn't sterile. So I thought, okay, as long as I don't have to pay for, thank goodness for Medicare, as long as I didn't have to pay for the more expensive drug. And I didn't, thank goodness. So I started getting that drug, and things started to improve all over again. And then he asked me if I would like to join a nationwide clinical trial for AMD, wet AMD. And I'm not a big fan of big pharma. So originally I said no. And then several months went by, and it was the second year that I was seeing him, and he asked me again. And I said, okay, they're giving me a stipend. They give their people stipends. And I thought, okay, well, if they're going to pay me, and if they're going to have a driver pick me up from home to take me down 45 minutes for the time I'm spending doing this trial and take me and bring me back home. Yeah. All right. I will do it because I really like to help people. And by being participant of this trial, I felt like I was, helping. I'm helping the study. It's a double blind study, so nobody knows whether I'm getting the regular shot that I would be getting. There's no placebo. Everybody who is participating in the study does get a shot every month when they go in. And I started this in December of 24. So my third shot is coming up next week. And I've noticed some changes, which is nice, but I also noticed that for now, the right eye again, occasionally I have that same difficulty about seeing where the dots are towards the end of the month before I'm getting another shot. So apparently these are not right now lasting as long as I would like, and I'll mention that when I see them on Tuesday morning. So let's see. So again, everybody gets an injection, and nobody knows which one is the quote real injection. And there's a difference with this trial. One injection is a similar medication to the one you've been having from from the retinologist, and the experimental or trial part, those people who end up getting the trial injection are getting an injection of like a little capsule, very small. I'm visualizing a really teeny tiny piece of spaghetti with a hole in it or something. I don't know. It's a time release thing. So that supposedly with the time release, you're supposed to get the medication over the entire four weeks. So I'm not positive which I'm getting. I just know that whenever I get a shot, I get a bunch of those little black dots. I forget what they're called for some reason.
Floaters.
Yeah, thank you. I get a whole slew of those floaters and then they go away, which is not the way it worked when I was just getting the drug that I was normally getting from my retinologist. So it could be that it's because it's a different drug, or it could be that I'm, one of the folks who's getting the time release. I have no idea. But they check my vision and blood pressure and all of that, and then every so often uh, they'll take a blood sample, and then they will also inject a dye and that will go up into my eyes, and they look at both eyes. They take these pictures of both eyes and they see, what's happening with regard to the amount of moisture inside of the eye each time. But they do the blood test, urine test, and dye injection only every so often. And I have to look again at the information that I received, but I have a feeling that they're going to do that this Tuesday, or if not, then the next week. I can't remember. Now, this is a nationwide study, and I thought it was still open for everybody. And I found out that this morning, actually, that they closed the study only to people who have AMD diagnosis, but who have not yet started treatment, which is unfortunate because I have a couple of friends who have been getting the shots and unless they had, because I gave a few people some information about what 3 weeks ago. So if they called because this was just shut down for people who are currently getting shots, that was just last week that they shut it down to just new people getting diagnosed who have not yet gotten a treatment. So I figure I gave Mev some information, and if anybody knows someone who is recently diagnosed and has not yet had a treatment, if they'd be interested in participating in this clinical trial, they're the ones who could still get in. This is stage 3 of the trial, as I understand it. And I don't know if there's going to be a stage 4. So that's kind of, what my experience has been. I'm hoping that my left eye remains dry, and I'm hoping that either way, whatever shot I'm getting will do the trick and reverse the wet back to dry. That would be really, really nice. So that's all that I need to tell you about my wet macular degeneration. And so, Becky, it's your turn now.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. And thanks to Rose for asking me to participate in this. My name is Becky Dale. I'm 71. I'm in Gainesville, Florida. I have short gray hair and it's a little bit spiky. I'm wearing glasses, and in this world of OLOC, I would be described as butch. So that's who's speaking. Oh, and I have retinitis pigmentosa. When I was preparing for this, I got a whole thing of what I was going to talk about, and I was hoping that I'd, feel the time. And as it turned out, the first time I kind of talked it through, it was a half an hour. I've whittled it down to stay within the parameters that Rose had set for me. So hopefully there's enough here that will be interesting. So I was going to just go kind of through the timeline of my vision loss. When I was 25, I wasn't being able to see as well driving in the dark. So I went to an ophthalmologist, had the eye test, and was diagnosed. I had astigmatism, and here's some glasses. They were really cool John Lennon glasses. I went on my way. Didn't think about it a whole lot unless I was driving at night. I was an athlete. I was playing softball. I was playing basketball, all kinds of things that, I need to be active with my visual field. I was playing soccer as the goalie, so I had to watch up, and I was being able to do all those things. Then in my late 30s, I was part of a group here in Gainesville, Florida, the Lavender Menace Sporting Group. And we had a softball league that I helped start. And, through that, I met some friends, and a friend asked me to play racquetball with her. So at 40, I went to play racquetball, which I'd done in college. And in the 4-wall cement enclosure, the ball was pinging around the edges, and I missed the ball, and then I got hit by the ball, and then I swung and missed again. And my friend got very concerned and said, "Quit goofing around." And I said, I'm not, I just can't see it. And she said, "Well, you've got to go to a doctor." So at this point, I went to an optometrist, which is the medical more doctor that deals with eyes and various eye conditions. And as he was examining me, he got a little bit excited. And then he said, "I've not had this experience with 40-year-olds to tell you that you have a genetically based disease called retinitis pigmentosa," which is a degeneration of the retina, which is the rods and cones, the part that takes in light that gives you images. And so I went out of his office to the university clinic and did a whole bunch of tests there. And then they referred me to a retina specialist. And one of the main tests that told the story was a visual field test, which the visual field test, if you haven't ever done that, it's you look straight ahead at a dot and then lights blink all around you. And when you see the light, you push a button to indicate that you see it. Well, I could tell there was a lot I was missing. And at the end of that test, they said, you have 10 degrees of visual field. And which means that you're legally blind. As Rose introduced, legal blindness has the correction of the 20/20 that we're used to of you can't, there's a number that beyond that you're legally blind, but you're also legally blind if you have less than 20 degrees of your visual field. So at 40, I was legally blind. Now, my central vision with glasses was corrected to 20/20, and now it's corrected to 20/40. But at this point, I only have 10 degrees of my visual field left. But it's been a very slow progression. So from 40 to 46, I was still really active, doing sports, riding my bike, using my central vision as an athlete and just in my life. I thought really well. And every year I'd go to my retina doctor and he said, "Are you still driving?" And I'd say, "Yes." And he'd say, "Well, you should stop." And I go, "Yes." And he actually was legally bound. He was supposed to report me, which he never did, but which I feel thankful for, although it might have been helpful. And I feel grateful that I never had an accident. But when I was 46, two things happened. I went back to my home city, Portland, Oregon, visiting my mother, was going to my brother's house for dinner. It was dark and a little bit rainy. I borrowed my mom's car, got on the freeway, and at the next exit, I had to get off because I was so anxious, so freaked out that I could not see enough. I pulled into a store parking lot, went into the store, and made a phone call because there weren't cell phones then. Made a phone call to my brother. I said, "Come get me. I can't drive." He came, got me. And so that shook me. And then soon after that, I was leaving a parking lot and I looked to the right to see if anybody was coming. And to my left, a bicycle was coming on the sidewalk and he bumped right up against me and he was really, really mad. And he wasn't hurt, but it scared the bejeebies out of me. So those two things. And then, as life's quirk would have it, I was newly involved with my wife, Madeline, who worked at the Division of Blind Services here in Gainesville, Florida, who we did not meet through her work. We met through the community, but it was kind of helpful that she knew things, but she also was really pushy. And she insisted that she would not ride with me if I still was driving. And soon after that, I gave up driving. I didn't give up my driver's license because I didn't have to. I just made the choice not to drive. And it was probably about 10 years later when there was some renewal thing. I went to the DMV and thought maybe I would still get a driver's license because I could pass those visual tests because that's all central vision. But when the guy asked me, "Is there any reason why you shouldn't be driving?" I said, "Yes, I'm legally blind." He goes, "Nobody's ever told me that." I said, "That's because nobody ever wants to give up driving. Our world is such that giving up driving is one of the hardest things. Our independence is very linked in most of our cities to be able to get around in a car. And it's just one of the hardest things. And still, 20 years later, I still whine about not being able to drive. It's very limiting. I feel grateful that I live in a city where there are buses. I have a great community of friends. I have a partner that's willing to drive me a lot. And there's Uber, and there's a program here that has discount rides for using Uber. So I take advantage of all of those. And up until I was 65, maybe, I was still riding my bike around until I had an accident and broke my hand. And that was the last that I rode my bike. It's like, okay, I got it. I hope I don't have to have any other things. So one of the things that happens with not having peripheral vision is that I trip, I run into things. Sometimes doorways aren't as wide as I thought they were. I bump them. The other part about RP is that I, besides losing peripheral vision, I'm total blind in the dark. I can't see the hand in front of my face. So that has limited my movement in the dark. And I also have trouble distinguishing colors. Sometimes I have to ask, does this go with this? Is this blue or black? Is this red, orange, whatever it is? I have to ask my wife those questions to figure those things out. So I'm looking down at some notes that I took. This is another thing. If you can see, I'm going to hold up this tablet. This is what I've had to change to for my own writing. It has really heavy lines, and I use a Sharpie marker to see it. I also have just recently got a handheld device. It's a miniature CCTV that's handheld. That's different than a magnifier. It can magnify, which is helpful, but it also changes background colors and print colors so that I can see the contrast better. And it's small enough that I can carry it in my purse, my backpack, whatever. I can take it into restaurants to read menus. And that's just a recent thing that I've had that's kind of exciting to have. Let me just check my notes. About 2 years ago, I read a book called Country of the Blind by Andrew Leland. And I know that Carla has reference material that this book is on there. So, but the writer of the book, he has RP, and he goes about he tells of his personal progress, but he also tells the history of blindness in various organizations and within the blind community that I knew about them because when I first got diagnosed, I went to the Fighting Blindness Foundation. I went to the National Blind, I've lost the exact name, but I've went to all the different sites. I actually went to a conference down in Orlando and all of that, when I was first diagnosed, seemed really far away and unnecessary in my life, which I think was a little bit arrogant and definitely ableist on my part. I was resistant to claim my own blindness. But reading this book from Andrew Leland sparked something. And even though I'd had a cane for 20 years and had mobility training, understood how to use it effectively, it was in my backpack more than it was in my hand. So reading this book, I have now a white cane user. Most of the time that I'm in public, I can still get away with not using it. I'm not sure that's to my advantage. It works great until I run into something or I trip on something. So if I have the cane, it eliminates that a whole bunch of the time. And the feeling that I have sometimes is that using my cane is a bit like coming out. I'm exposing some part of me that I can pass with. I have the luxury of passing because I still have my central vision is still really good, but I don't think that that's necessarily to my advantage. So I think that that's what I have to say. And I certainly would be happy to answer any questions if some come up from what I gave you. Thank you. And I will give over to Carla, who's now going to speak to us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carla. I'm a white woman, short white woman in my late 70s with short hair. My eyes are now brown. They were green, and that's the side effect of one of the many drugs I have taken for my eyes. It's kind of interesting what these things do. My story is a little bit different. I'll just quickly go into it because I would like to talk a bit about resources. But when I was a child, I didn't see. I have what's called pathologic myopia, which means that I was one of these children who thought that leaves grew on the ground. I never saw them in the trees. I just had no idea where they came from. And I had a very rocky education. I couldn't read. I couldn't see the blackboard. And teachers thought I was very stupid. And I was placed in a class for slow learners and what they used to call dummies. So I was in that class through the third grade until finally, and part of it was my own fault, I have to say. We would do an eye test and you'd line up and read the Snelling test. And I would just listen to what the kids in front of me said, and I didn't want to be left out. So I'd get up there and I could read the eye chart. But I didn't see it. I knew what the order was. And but finally, one day, they changed the chart, and I got caught. So I wound up at an eye doctor, and they found out all these years I really hadn't been able to see, and that I wasn't just a really klutzy kid. My father used to call me Stitch because I had so many stitches from falling on things. But, so I wound up with glasses and eventually contact lenses. And it was really great because I like to be athletic and I seem to be fine. And one of the things you find out is that doctors do not tell you what the consequences of having these conditions might be down the road. It might be for the better, you can look on the optimistic side. But suddenly in my 50s, I suddenly woke up one morning and I could see green spots in my left eye, and that was blood. And I went to an eye doctor and I was diagnosed with, I have a rare disease called choroidal neovascularization, which is it's a condition that's behind the retina. One of the things I've learned over the years is there seems to be one or two ways to see, but a million ways to go blind. It's really, I've met people with so many extraordinary stories of how they lost their sight. And they did some photodynamic treatments, which just made me blind. So when the second eye went, I decided to do something. I got into a drug trial for Lucentis. You can look up drug trials. I got into one. I was still working. I took a leave. I commuted to Boston from New York every 26 days, I think it was. And I had to get an injection of this new drug, which was called Lucentis. And my experience was very much like what you've heard. I commuted, I had these medical tests and so on. And it really did improve to some degree my eyesight. The other side of these drugs is that, of course, the original drugs, like Lucentis, it was every month. Eventually, drugs came along that were good for every 2 months. And now I'm on a drug where I go every 11 to 12 weeks. And it's like a vacation, let me tell you, having to go in there every 26 days. The injection itself isn't painful, but the recovery is. Once the numbness wears off, your eye can be really, really sore. And if you're like me and you're blind in one eye now, you're sort of down to 0 for a while. So I do that, and these treatments eventually can make you blind. Putting injections in your eye raises your eye pressure from a normal range of, say, 15 to 54. And this is not, it's not an arithmetic scale. So 54 is not just like 40 points more than that. It's astronomical. So the treatment's bad, but there really is no alternative. And that's why I do it. I was a job save, and I got myself registered as being legally blind through the New York State Commission for the Blind. And one thing that people don't want to do is to say that they're blind or low vision, that most of the people I've been in many support groups with, except for the people who are totally blind, they try to pass. People don't want to be different. People can pass, people can't see that you're blind if you're standing on a street corner, but it really does you no good. If you can get a certificate of legal blindness, it offers all kinds of services to you. In many states, you will get mobility training, you will get equipment. For us older women, the equipment will be limited. I was a job save, and a job save is kind of the highest level that they want to help because you're someone who wants to go back to work. So if you have a job that you do or want to do, they will help you more than if you are someone who presents as retired. So they gave me, I went to an institute, I went to the Jewish Guild for the Blind. I was taught home safety. I took a course in cooking. They had a course, part of it was sewing, which I didn't do when I could see. So I thought that was quite funny. They taught us how to do all kinds of things. They come in your home, they teach you home safety. And of course, because I was a job save, I got a lot of training in computer equipment. Now, luckily for you folks out there, there is a lot of free training out there. If you cannot see your computer, your iPhone, your iPad well, you need to start learning how to use it without seeing. Because if you wait until the day you can't see that device at all, it's going to be so much harder for you to learn. But, and you also have to remember that we live in the age of technology, and technology is a great equalizer. And if you set up a determination to learn these things, that you can do almost anything that you could do before. I have to say, I took 3 classes in Braille, and the Braille class came with a video full of things. And there were instructions about how you could do anything with Braille. You could even get a Braille caliper and learn to measure, and then you could use a circle saw. And that I passed on. I do not recommend that if you're legally blind, that you take the class and saw, they do have one in home construction that's in the Bay Area. For the person in the Bay Area, they do have a camp there that you can go to and you can learn all of these skills. And it's free. All of these things are free. There are free technology courses for iPad, PC, Mac. All of these things are on the web. If you have an Apple phone, your Apple Store has free classes for assistive use of the phone with AI. Now, the voiceover, the SIRI, because she's sitting here and I don't want it to hear, that came out in 2004. And it has developed so amazingly in these past 20 years. It's just incredible. Now I'm getting lazy because most of what I have to do, I can do by speaking to the phone and also speaking to what I call the A-Lady, which is the ALEXA device. Everything in my house speaks. You can get appliances, you can get microwaves, you can get stoves, you can get washers and dryers, all of which will run from an app on your phone, which you can either speak into or which you can work by swiping across it. I mean, this is really amazing. In the handout that I've given to Mev, and which will go up for you on the OLEC site, I give a lot of the apps that are available on the App Store for free that you can use. I'll just tell you just very briefly about a few of them. I like to go to museums. Now, in New York State, you cannot be a museum unless you provide educational assistance to people who need it. So I go on a lot of museum tours for blind and low vision people. But the other thing you can do is there are apps that you can get for free in your phone. The one I use in the museum is the Seeing AI. And all I have to do with that app is open it. I hold it up in front of me, and I sometimes I'll have to scan around a little bit. It can see the entry information to a show, which is a lot of text, and I hold it up, it reads me the entire text for the show. Then I move over. If there's a painting, I can move around. It'll give me information about the painting. The apps can also read a menu. It can read the menu. It'll go down the first column, zip, it'll go up, go down the second column, the third column, or however your menu is set out. There is another app I put in there it's called OKO. This app sees traffic lights. You hold this up and it'll tell you whether the light is green, yellow, or red. And it'll beep at different speeds to tell you whether it's safe to go. So there is an app now for just about everything. So I put a whole lot of apps in there. They're free. The only one I may have put in that's not free is Voice Dream Reader. And the way I got mine is I wait for the time of the conventions that the blind organizations have, and I got it for half price. Now, the conventions, I put a list up of organizations for the blind. They all are good for you. The ACB, the American Council for the Blind, tends to be organized around affiliate groups that could be like older women. It could be parents of children, guide dog users. I belong through the guide dog users chapter, and they have conventions every year, as does the NFB. The National Federation of the Blind is the oldest and largest organization in the United States. Many people find it a little bit cult-like, and they also meet every year. They have a much more hierarchical organization. However, one of the things that they provide, which is really great, is there's a service called Newsline. That's NEWSLINE. And I gave all of these websites. You can go to NFB and you can get over 300 newspapers from around the country and magazines free on your telephone. I listen every day to parts of the New York Times, and they're pretty open to improving it too. I've gone to some Newsline meetings, and for example, the articles in Newsline are alphabetized. So if you're in a section, for example, on national news or international news, Afghanistan might come up first, and something on the Zulus would come up last. That's the way they do it. But I did get them to add the page number for the newspaper at the end of each article, so you can kind of get an idea of the importance of where this article is. So you can get Newsline. The other thing you can get is the playing machine, which has books and also magazines on a cartridge. It's not a disc. There's an SD cartridge inside that, and it's shaped like a disc so that it's easy for you to handle, and you put it inside the machine. I have given up on the machine. I have an app in my phone. The book service is called Bard, and I can get just about any book or magazine on Bard. And they give me a subscription, for example, to the New Yorker magazine. And every 2 weeks, they send me an email saying it's dropped into your Bard. And you go in and you open it, and you have any magazine you want, just about. The other organization for the blind I belong to is Blind Pride International. The people who run it are all in Miami, Florida. And I'm really not quite active. I'm going to do their podcast for them. But there are all these organizations that are around. There's the Foundation Fighting Blindness, which was mentioned. It's primarily about RP. And there are other organizations that are specifically about, for example, diabetic retinopathy. For my rare disease, when I was in the drug trial, and it was for non-AMD bleeding in the eye, and I asked them how many people were there on the east half of the country who had my eye disease who were in the trial, and they said 3. So, when you have a disease where it doesn't have a name and it's a Latinate, that's when you know you're kind of a little bit screwed. But one of the things you need to do is also to keep up on drug trials. They're listed online. I hope that that's going to be provided for you. The government does keep a list, maybe not anymore, of drug trials that are open. The other thing you can do is you can go to the major drug companies that make eye drugs, like Genentech, and they will tell you what drug trials they have and whether you're eligible. So if you hear of anybody having like an eye medication, and there are only so many companies that make these, Bausch & Lomb, Genentech, call up the company and find out if they have a trial for you. So I put up these apps. I put up a number of books you might like, memoirs. There are 2 memoirs by lesbians. There's Lori Rubin, who was born blind. Can you believe it? Do you dream in color? And then Susan Krieger has written another number of books about traveling around with her guide dog. Now, I'll just briefly mention guide dogs. Only 10% of blind and low vision people have guide dogs. They are free. You would apply for a guide dog from a guide dog school. There are about at least 10 of them in the United States. Most of them offer labs and golden retrievers and an occasional German Shepherd. I have a poodle. And because I have a poodle, I've gotten all of my guide dogs. I have dog allergies. So I love labs. So if you have a lab, don't feel offended. But the only kind of guide dog I would be good with is a poodle, because like humans, they have hair and they don't have dander. So I've gotten all of my guide dogs from Pilot Dogs in Columbus, Ohio, but they are no longer doing poodles. So my current dog, who is now going to be 12, is going to be, I fear, my last poodle. The guide dog schools also, although they would never say this, they discriminate against older people. So if you're over 70, your chances of getting a first guide dog are really, 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 really slim. They just don't cater to older people, and especially to people who are older and you don't have a job. The guide dogs are free. They fly you to the school and back, and they house you at the school for training. The bad news is you have to live in the guide dog school for 26 days, usually, among people who may not be to your liking. The first time I went to guide dog school, the other newbies, as they called us, were all male Marines. And I'll tell you, it was the longest 26 days of my life being completely surrounded by male Marines who were really horrible guys. And I wanted that dog. I needed that dog to keep working because, I worked near the World Trade Center. There was nothing down there. I have zero vision at night. I couldn't get home. It was very simple. I was going to get that dog. You have to be like really stubborn and persistent to get your mobility training and to get everything else. And the one thing I recommend most, and I think I say this at the beginning, is find a support group. If you have a vision problem, find a support group, because your doctor is not interested in your life once you leave that office door. I have found out nothing from doctors about how to live my life. Everything I know about being blind comes from a support group or from one of the blind organizations or from classes I have sat through. I have sat through more groups where I walked away with one good piece of information. And that one good piece of information was worth it to sit there, to find out about one new product, one new piece of information, one service that I could tap into, and so that I could live my life as fully as I could. And so I've put a lot of these resources up there for you. It's up to you to go out there and deal with it. When I was in my first support group, I'll leave you with this. There was a man in the group who had gone into surgery for he had had a pituitary gland problem. When he woke up the next day, he was blind. He had had no vision problems. And I've heard several stories since of people going blind from pituitary disasters. Your pituitary gland is right next to your optic nerve. Another one of my friends, they cut her optic nerve with a laser, trying to fix her pituitary. He did not go out of his house for 2 years. He was afraid. After 2 years, he made it out to the front steps and finally around the block. You're going to have to choose what kind of life you want. You can be I have blind friends who live in their homes. They leave their home and they get into paratransit. They go where they're going in paratransit, and then they are taken into a building. That's the kind of life you can have if you don't learn skills. These skills are not so difficult. If you still have a hand, you can feel the sidewalk. Technology is going to change the way you live. They now are going to have robotic guide dogs. So if you don't want a dog, you're soon going to be able to have a robotic one. There's a robotic cane with a bottom. It's in the beta testing now, that has a bottom on it where it can see every curb. If there's a stick in your path, it'll stop, it'll tell you. There are electronic devices that are going to change your life if you embrace them. Two of the devices I'll bring to your attention, they're at the bottom of my handout. The new thing in blindness is the wearable. And you can use these whether you have a little vision problem or whether you are totally blind. You can do the wearables. What a wearable is it's as if you are putting on a pair of glasses. And these are made, the one pair is called the Meta glasses. And Meta, this company is owned by Facebook. The glasses are made by Ray-Ban. They are extremely fashionable. You can go into many eyeglass chains and try one of these things on. You can find them in a Sunglass Hut, and you can also find them in places like Lens Crafters. You can get them with or without a prescription. You can get them in clear, those things that turn from light to dark, those gradated ones, or you can get them in sunglasses. Those glasses, and unfortunately, as you may have heard, they were used in New Orleans. The guy who ran over the people in the street, he first used these Ray-Ban glasses to bike through the street, and he videotaped everything he saw and analyzed it later. So with these Ray-Ban glasses, it will describe what's in front of you. If you put in a picture from your contacts of a friend of yours, these glasses can find your friend. They can read text. They can play music. You can make a telephone call on your eyeglasses if you have your phone with you. You can do a lot of things. The Ray-Ban glasses start at about $390 without a prescription. It is very expensive to be blind. This is the bad news about blindness. All these things add up. The other thing is the Envision glasses. With the Envision glasses, which I don't have, which are about $3,500, you could put the glasses on, you could open a book, look down at the book, and the Envision glasses will read the book to you. The Envision glasses can also identify friends, tell you what's in a store window, read your menu, and get you about anywhere. It'll see the crossing. It'll do everything for you. The Envision glasses, I can't remember whether they have less latency or more latency. I also recommended some apps which I use. One of these apps, like the Seeing AI, and also there's one called Be My Eyes. You can get live help from Be My Eyes to help you do what you want. So if you don't have a partner who's going to tell you, oh my God, you've got an orange sweater on and a red pair of pants, I don't think so. Just call up Be My Eyes and they will tell you how to match your clothing. Be My Eyes will tell you when you go into a hotel room, and I still travel by myself, but when I go in a hotel room, I don't know which is the conditioner and which is the shampoo. So I call it Be My Eyes, I hold it up, they tell me what's what. Make sure you have your clothes on and you're not in the shower. A number of my friends have unfortunately made this mistake. They also can do it with Seeing AI. Be My Eyes can also help you take a COVID test. They have a specially trained group of people who can help you through medical tests because not everybody's trained for that. They respect your privacy, guaranteed. There are volunteers who work for Be My Eyes all over the world. So these apps are out there. All of the ones I gave you are free. Try them. You have nothing to lose. They may not work perfectly the first time. Heck around on your keyboard and use them. And, I don't have time to go into all of them, but there are also demonstrations online for all of these. And I listed a bunch of podcasts, and some of them are technical. And every week they go through a different appliance, they go through a different app on your phone, and they tell you exactly how to work it. So you have to get out there and listen to the podcasts, go online. There are demonstrations of these things. And it's really important to find other people like yourself, because it's really annoying. You could be in a chat group like this, and after 10 minutes, people forget to identify themselves. And people don't understand, and they're never going to understand. I have neighbors in my apartment building. I've lived there over 30 years. I recognize them in the hall. They think I see them. I know their voice. If I run into them 5 miles away, I don't know who the hell they are, and they're very insulted. So you have to, you just have to roll with it. You can either be depressed or get out there and have fun. There are blind groups for everything. There are blind bowling groups. There's a blind golf group. There's a blind rock climbing group. There's an international blind baseball group. If you're still fit enough to do this, there are blind tennis clubs. If there's something you want to do, you can do it. Just give yourself permission to do it and get out there and do it. And if like, have your name right, JR, if you fall down, then you might decide maybe this isn't for me, but you can do it. There's a blind bowling league that has a convention every year. If you can do it, there's a blind group for you. You don't have to go with sighted people and struggle. There are blind tour groups. I could go on and on, but I'm going to stop because I think people have a lot of questions. But the world is out there for you to find, and you don't have to be sighted to enjoy it. Because my motto is, whatever I can see today is going to be better than what I can see tomorrow. So I'm doing it today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carla and JR and Becky, for sharing all your experiences and knowledge about vision loss.